I've never really talked about this. Not to my family, not to my closest friends, except for the few who were there that night. It's been years, but some things don't fade. Some moments carve themselves into your memory, replaying relentlessly, no matter how desperately you try to silence them. This is one of those moments. I was in college at the time, part of a fraternity, living the kind of life you expect from someone in their early 20s. Parties, late nights, schoolwork I probably didn't take as seriously as I should have. That night, I was out picking up liquor for a party we were planning for the following evening. It should have been a simple, mundane errand, but that night, the ordinary turned into something horrific. The road I took was one I'd driven hundreds of times before. It was dark, but not deserted. Streetlights cast long shadows that danced across the pavement like silent specters. Everything felt normal, just another quiet evening drive. I don't even remember why I looked down at my radio. Maybe I was changing the station, maybe adjusting the volume. It was just a second, 1 second. But when I looked back up, he was already there. There was no time to react. I couldn't swerve, couldn't brake in time. By the time my brain processed that someone was crossing the street, it was already too late. I felt the impact before I fully saw it, the heavy, sickening thud as a body hit the hood of my car, rolling briefly before tumbling off to the side. It's a sound I still hear when I close my eyes at night. I screamed, slammed on the brakes. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might explode. For one brief, horrifying moment, the thought flashed through my mind. Just hit the gas, drive, pretend it never happened. Maybe no one would know. Maybe I could escape it. But deep down, I knew I couldn't. I pulled over, hands shaking so violently I could barely shift the car into park. I jumped out and ran to where he had landed, my legs threatening to give out beneath me. When I reached him, I realized his family was already there. They had been standing by the restaurant he'd just left and had seen everything. Their screams pierced the night, raw and broken, ripping through me like knives. He was lying on the pavement, his body twisted unnaturally, blood streaming from his nose and mouth. Two men crouched beside him, desperately trying to do something, anything, but it was already clear he was beyond help. I stood frozen, then collapsed onto the curb, my hands clawing at my own hair, my entire body trembling. I kept repeating over and over, I didn't see him, I didn't see him. It was all I could think. But what did it matter? He was dying because of that 1 second I looked away. Paramedics arrived quickly. I watched as they lifted him onto a stretcher, red and blue lights flashing across the pavement, his family's screams echoing in my ears. And then, something happened that I still cannot fully comprehend. His wife walked over to me. I had been curled in on myself, sobbing harder than I ever had. I couldn't face her. I expected rage, cursing, anger, but instead, she sat beside me, placed a hand on my shoulder, and she said nothing. She had been married to him for almost 50 years. She said they had a good life. And then she hugged me. She forgave me. I was speechless. How do you respond to that? Her simple act nearly broke me. And as I watched them load him into the ambulance, part of me went with him that night. Legally, it was ruled an accident, no charges. I hadn't been drinking, I hadn't been speeding, there were no drugs in my system. One of my friends picked me up from the police station. I don't remember the drive home. I don't remember what I said. I barely remember the next few weeks. But I remember the guilt. It pressed on me like a weight every second of every day. I drank to escape it, heavily. I stopped going to class, stopped caring about anything. By senior year, I had dropped out completely. I couldn't hold a job, couldn't be responsible. I moved back in with my parents because I felt I had no other choice. I had hit rock bottom and kept digging. One night, I swallowed a handful of pills. I just wanted out. But somewhere, deep in the haze, I realized I didn't want to die. That was the night I decided to crawl out of the hole I had spent so long digging for myself. Recovery was slow and painful. I'll never fully recover, but piece by piece, I started putting myself back together. I joined the Navy, not out of some noble desire to serve, but because I needed discipline, structure, something to prevent me from completely withering away. It worked. I saw parts of the world I never imagined. I met people who helped me find purpose again. And now, after nearly a decade, I'm finally on track to go back to school and finish what I started. It took years. It took everything I had left. But I'm here. And for the first time since that night, I feel like I might actually deserve to be. There are some things you never get over. Time doesn't heal wounds. It only teaches you how to carry the weight. I still think of his forgiveness. I can still hear his family screaming. I still replay that single second when I took my eyes off the road. But after all these years, I can go out again, be with friends, live my life. Maybe, just maybe, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And if there is, I think I'm finally starting to see it. People love to tell stories about their crazy exes. It's almost like a badge of honor, a way to prove you survived the impossible. But nothing prepares you for someone whose insanity isn't just harmless chaos. It's calculated, obsessive, and destructive. I dated a woman who was criminally insane. Not the kind of crazy you laugh about, the slashed tires or silly arguments type. This was darkness incarnate, infiltrating my life like a parasite, leaving wounds that wouldn't heal for years. When I met her, she seemed normal, ex-military, sober, grounded. At first, honestly, she was almost comforting. I was at one of the lowest points in my life, desperately clinging to anything that would make me feel alive. So I ignored the small, insidious red flags, the tiny flickers of unease that, in hindsight, were warnings screaming in silence. I wanted something, anything, that would make my life feel less empty. I soon uttered the 3 most dangerous words of my life. I love you. That was when the cracks began to show, and the true horror revealed itself. She didn't just doubt me. She twisted my words into weaponized accusations, making it feel like I had committed some unforgivable crime simply by expressing my feelings. Her eyes, once calm, flickered with something dark, a storm I hadn't noticed at first. Then things escalated. I was living in a run-down motel, a place that only amplified our chaos. One fight, small at first, spiraled into a nightmare. I asked her to leave. She refused. I threatened to call the police. Before I could touch my phone, she had beaten me to it, calling them with false claims of abuse. But when the police arrived, they saw through the act. Maybe they sensed the madness radiating from her. One officer, seeing my exhaustion, whispered, "Stay away from the crazy ones." I wish I had listened sooner. After escaping that motel, I tried to rebuild. I moved into a new place, thinking a fresh start would erase the terror. But it didn't last. One day, she called, voice trembling, feigning regret, claiming she wanted to make things right. I almost fell for it. Almost. I let my guard down just enough to answer a single question. "Where are you living now?" That tiny slip was all she needed to infiltrate my life again. Through a terrifying stroke of luck, or her unrelenting cunning, she found a back door. She befriended my landlord's girlfriend, slowly embedding herself into my world. Months passed as she lurked in the shadows, twisting reality, poisoning minds, turning everyone around me against me. My home was no longer a sanctuary. It became a cage filled with invisible threats. I couldn't relax. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't escape the constant gnawing dread. Warnings went ignored until one night she finally snapped. Manic, uninvited, she appeared at my door, refusing to leave, screaming and clawing at the boundaries of my life. It was only then that my landlord and his girlfriend understood the depth of what I had endured. They physically removed her and threatened the police. For a moment, I thought the nightmare was over. It wasn't. The next day, she appeared at my workplace, screaming at my boss, calling him a liar when he said I wasn't there. She was hunting me, and the only way to escape was to vanish completely. Within a week, I moved again. No roommates, no shared spaces, just me. Over the next few years, I uprooted my entire life, moving across the country to ensure I would never see her again. A year later, curiosity dawned at me. I looked her up online. What I found was horrifying. DUIs, assaults, drug charges, arrests every few months. Her life had become a self-inflicted descent into chaos. She rarely spent time outside of jail, her criminal record piling higher with each passing month. Her most recent charge was something minor, yet it guaranteed more time behind bars. I felt nothing but relief. She was someone else's problem now. But even as I breathed easier, a part of me shivered. The memory of her twisted grin, the way she could worm into anyone's life and manipulate reality, it haunts me still. Some people don't just break your heart, they invade your entire existence, leaving a trail of fear that lingers long after you've escaped. And though I moved thousands of miles away, though I rebuilt every piece of my life, I know that a shadow like that doesn't truly disappear. You can only hope that you outrun it, and pray that one day it vanishes entirely into the darkness it came from. There's a lot people tell you to do when someone you love gets hurt. Report it, get help, trust the system. But what happens when the system fails? When the person who victimized someone you love is still out there walking free? When the person you love can't sleep at night, haunted by fear and shame, what then? Last year, my boyfriend was assaulted. He didn't tell me when it happened. He didn't tell anyone. He carried it silently, alone, because the man who did it looked him straight in the eyes and threatened to kill him if he went to the police. I only found out about it this week. When I did, something inside me shifted. I already knew whispers about this man, stories that circulated quietly in our small, tight-knit community. Ex-girlfriends had spoken in hushed tones about things that never reached the authorities. Crimes, threats, patterns of abuse that should have been stopped, but weren't. And yet here he was, still walking free, probably convinced he was untouchable. Meanwhile, my boyfriend had carried this horror for over a year, alone, because he was too scared to do anything. The helplessness, the sheer rage that swelled inside me, it was suffocating. I couldn't stand it. Knowing that someone you love has been violated and feeling utterly powerless to fix it makes your stomach twist. Then it fuels a fire you can't put out. I sat with that fire for a day, silent and calculating. I didn't post online, didn't ask anyone for advice. I made a decision on my own. I work in hazardous environments, so I had something most people don't: a full contaminant-blocking suit. No fibers, no fingerprints, no sweat, no trace. Underneath, I wore clothes I would never use again: an old hoodie, worn jeans, and sneakers. I didn't take my car, that would be stupid. Instead, I rode my bike, 12 miles from a wooded area outside of town, avoiding main roads, keeping to trails, making sure I passed no stores, banks, or cameras. No records, no trace. When I reached his house, it was just after sunset, perfect timing for someone to answer the door willingly. When he opened it, I didn't wait. I didn't introduce myself. I didn't let him speak. The instant I saw his face, I slammed him into the doorframe. I felt the sickening crunch of his nose breaking. Blood gushed instantly, some of it hitting me, most pooling on the floor. He barely had time to react before I grabbed the back of his head and slammed him into the door again, harder this time. His forehead split open. He collapsed to the floor like a rag doll, gasping, disoriented, trying to understand what had just happened. I crouched next to his ear and whispered, calm but deadly, "I know everyone in this town's gay community." I let it sink in. Then I stood, turned, and walked out. No words, no hesitation. By the time I reached my bike, my heartbeat was finally slowing. I retraced my path through the woods, careful to let the adrenaline subside. The suit was burned in the bonfire that Friday night. The clothes I wore underneath disposed of. No trace, no evidence, no name. He won't report it. What would he say? I got my face smashed by someone I never saw? The threat still lingers, and the man knows it. That's enough. People might tell me I should feel remorse, shame, guilt, that I should have left it to the law, to the system. But the system failed. Force met force. And the memory of his face hitting that door will haunt him every time he thinks about hurting someone again. Not everyone will understand. Not everyone will agree. But my boyfriend sleeps a little easier now. Justice, in its rawest form, has been served, and I regret nothing. Sometimes, in the dead of night, I still think about him, about the power of fear, about how close people come to living nightmares that go unnoticed. And I know, in a world where the system fails too often, some people like me exist to make sure predators feel the weight of what they've done. That knowledge is chilling, and it's comforting too.